Namaste, namaste, everybody who's tuning in. I have for you, as you see before us, a delight beyond all comparison. And this is the wonderful, wonderful Ann Tucker, who is on a parallel mission as myself. That Anne is a wonderful trance medium who channels the angels, the angelic kingdom, hence you can see our title. So let me just be really official with who Anne is by sharing her short bio with you. And so you see Ann Tucker is a healer and a trance channel. But interestingly, she had another life up until about 15 years ago, where she was working with Microsoft or for Microsoft and C-suite coaching. Don't quite know what that is, but obviously in the tech world and in the mid-tech industries. But Anne, of course, like myself, has been a mystic most of her life. And so she made a serious choice 15 years ago to move into this really meteoric success as an angel channel. And not only is she channeling the Angelic Collective, but also the Mother of Creation and, of course, the Blessed Yeshua, the great Christos. She transmits their healing energies through live events and through something she calls Soul Convergence and Angelic Frequencies Series with a monthly peace-bathing healing program, and is the creator of a business energetic and a soul type test, and an international best-selling author of her wonderful book, What Comes Next? A Channel Guide to Navigating the Greatest Shift of Our Time, which, if you didn't know, we're living right now. Which goes through Amazon and, of course, Barnes and Noble. And I hope other bookshops around the world. If not, we need to do something about that. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I've been hopping around all day with such excitement, knowing for well I would meet you, because I know it's 11 o'clock in the morning with you, because you're in Seattle, aren't you?
Yes, exactly. West Coast.
And I'm in London, and it's 7 o'clock in the evening. So you're at the beginning of the day, and I'm at the end of my day. So, Anne, where did it all begin?
Oh, gosh. I wish I had an awesome story like yours, where you're on a hill and 12 orbs come around you. That I listened to your story, and it is just so cool. Mine was, I think when we have our awakening moments, it's so exciting. And mine came on at first with a whisper, and then with a thump. It was, in the beginning, I had a couple really, really crazy prophetic dreams that 5 years later came true, like exactly as I saw them, like every detail. It was like I had visited my own future and seen things. It was almost like a forecast of this is where things are going for you. And then once that happened, once it all came true, then it kind of opened a door where I started having all of these crazy psychic experiences that I didn't understand. They seemed so odd, where I'd pop into other people's bodies. I'd be seeing out their eyes. I'd be bilocating and it would be crazy stuff. And over time, I came to understand that I was being shown how I could work as a healer, that I could move into another person's body. Angels could move in through me, and I could heal and feel the energies and feel as they shifted. And it was a journey. Like, the interesting thing about my own process, I think this may be true for a lot of people, is that there was absolutely no instruction book, that they let me bumble my way through it. And it took me longer because of that. Like, every step I had to figure it out, but it was way more creative. I think they know me. My guides know me really well. And I need that engagement, like if I knew the ending from the beginning, I wouldn't be as interested. So they keep me guessing, and they wait for me to figure things out. But it was a process, and the whole thing. Like, I think in the first couple of years of our journey, we're so curious. We're like mad sponges, it's just trying to figure it out. And then it became learning. I left my work in the corporate world, became a full-time healer. That was wonderful. And as soon as I got where I felt really good about what I was doing, where I felt competent, where I'd start a session, I'd be like, here we go, let me do my process. As soon as I got to that place where I was making money, this was my living, I didn't have to do another job. I could just do that. As soon as I got there, the angels, like, everything changed. It's like every 2 years, they mix it up and make me leave whatever I was doing behind and open up a new doorway. And it's constantly change and constantly pushing and constantly growing. So like, that's really, if I had to say in a nutshell, it has been a constant symphony, I will call it, of release and allow, release, allow, release, allow. Yeah.
And those two qualities, it seems that you take to rather like a duck to water. Is that true? Meaning that you're very aware of how we easily create resistance.
Oh,
And yet
gosh.
you seem to move through resistance into allowability and into acceptance with great ease. Is that?
Oh, thank you. It's a learned skill. It's a learned skill. It was not always easy for me. There was, I mean, they started off with baby steps. Like, for example, when I was in my 20s, I had an astrology reading, which, believe it or not, was actually like a part of a morale booster from my work at Microsoft. They paid for it. It was like our morale booster for the team. We got astrology readings. Like, this is great. Anyways, the lady said, she said, I hope you don't own the place you're living. And I didn't. I was living with a bunch of other girls at the time in my 20s. And she said, good, because you're going to move and move and move and move and move all your life. And that has been true. Like, basically something has happened every 2 years or so where I, for one reason or another, I end up in, I've remodeled and built houses, and then something happens and I have to move. And every time, and so I did this, I ended up actually like remodeling houses and then selling them. And that was part of how I supported myself for several years. And one of the challenges I had was that I would make all these special things in the homes. I would do like special touches. The temptation was always to bring them along. I would get amazing things. I found these incredible carved doors on Craigslist, and I wanted to bring them, but most of the time I had the discipline to leave them behind, because you need to. You got to release and allow. Let it go. Create it, let it go, and leave it behind. One time I broke the rule, and it was these drapes that I bought they were gorgeous. They were scalamandre fabric or trim, and they were just gorgeous drapes. And I wanted to bring them, and they weren't technically attached. So I thought, just this one time. So I brought them with me after the sale, and I carried them from house to house to house in garbage bags until they were so like out of fashion that nobody would want them. And it was such a lesson to me, like, just let it go. Let it go. And then the lessons got bigger as I got older. And so, like, leaving one of my relationships, one of my marriages, like, I knew it was not a functional relationship. I knew I needed to go, but I was at the time working as a healer, but I wasn't making enough that I felt I could support. I had 2 kids going into college. I was worried about how am I going to keep everybody afloat. So I just kept saying, as soon as I get my business going enough so that I just didn't want to have to go back to the other work. I wanted to stay in spirit. As soon as I get it there, I will leave, until finally the angels came through and they said, the business won't work until you leave. That you have to let go first, step into the gap, step into the opening, and then something new can emerge. And so that, I think, was a major turning point for me to understand how energy actually works, that energy that we have is finite, and we have to free energy up in order to begin something new.
Yeah. That's amazing. And there are so much that you've just shared. There is so much that I completely cohere with, in my own experience, because for me, the overarching thought, or the overlighting thought, as we feel that the angels overlight us and are lifting us into these higher vibrational qualities of force, that feeling is the language of the soul. And so we're becoming more emotionally intelligent about how we can lift ourselves up into these planes of reference. But we're being earthed at the same time. It's like what we were saying in our pre-show chat, and I was saying how humbling it's been.
Yes.
It gets us into the earth, because I'm not suggesting one moment that I believe that you are unearthed in your practice, because I see how immensely pragmatic you are about the way that you, for example, translate and deduce the purpose of this really sophisticated spiritual technology that is coming through the divine logos to you.
Yes.
And yet, isn't it interesting, as you journeyed, did you feel that what was awakening for you, that there was this profound sense of familiarity about it?
Oh, that is the thing. I would agree. Like, I think for me, that is one of our amazing tools of discernment. I think that when we hear things and it lands inside of us as if somehow we already knew it, like then we know it's true. It's the stuff that catches you like off left field. You're like, what? When, when you have somebody who delivers a message for you and it just doesn't, like, I would have never seen that. To me, those take a little more discernment. The ones that just sink right in, like, oh, I somehow I already knew that. It's like you're remembering it as opposed to hearing it for the first time. Yeah. Even though it could be something so outside of your wheelhouse. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So the oversoul, our higher self, and all of those extraordinary beings that we're communicating with are really lifting us up, are drawing us into higher octaves. And there's this, as you say, this profound sense of remembering.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's, I feel, one of the great indicators of our choice points of today, particularly as we look into the world that is melting before us.
Good word choice there.
Mean through through the heat. It's unbelievably hot in London today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! Wow.
Degrees Fahrenheit, and it's not easy in a city like this because it literally lives, as it were, in a basin, which was created by the Thames Valley. So here we are, all very, very hot. But anyway, in 2 days' time, it's going to drop by 20 degrees. So it's all
my gosh.
It's happening for a particular reason, so that we can actually accommodate ourselves within the process. And those tests come when we need to really chisel away or sculpt into the infinitesimal promise of what we know our creative energy is always going to be about. And you were mentioning it just now, because it's very interesting how your future self was speaking to you.
Yes.
And I know that that's something that you've picked up in your channeling, the nature of our future self that is already on another timeline living through and is possibly quite advanced in the creation of the new earth. But that new self, that future self, I should say, is actually speaking as we go through these great changes.
Yes.
And we never actually can see very clearly the vast radiation that we're giving off, even though we may be stumbling forward to get through whatever we need to get through, that actually we're radiating the purity of our soul's energy and informing others in a really, really positive way.
Yes. It was so fascinating. So you mentioned in your intro that I do a monthly peace bathing session. It's different every single month. The last one was fascinating because the goal of those is to kind of keep pace with the changes of energies that we're going through. It kind of keeps everybody primed. And in the last one, they brought in 7 aspects of each person's soul that was already in a higher octave of being and surrounded each person. So they were the 8th. And they said that in this life, we are the bridge that allows those higher octave selves to become. And so it was an amazing session. And then angels came in around. It was crazy. But the coolest thing was this understanding. It was like, here are 7. And these were, you would have thought, if you didn't know this was you looking at these other beings, you would have thought they were angels. You would have thought they were, because they were super, super, like beautiful, high vibe energies. But it was each person's next, next beyond nature. Amazing to see.
And so therefore that level of radiation is really a representation of crystalline presence that we're all moving through as we release the points of resistance, as we heal the neuroses of separation and move into this extraordinary, because we're still obviously apparently within duality, but living duality from the point of the glory of diversity rather than being caught up in those hard energies. I say this very compassionately, obviously, but it's time that we really lassoed our sorrow, lassoed our loss, so that we can see a way of being able to move. What comes to my mind as you share is, are there particular themes that you see appearing? Because you have this vast witness of people who are coming to you. And I'm sure that, your retreats and your workshops are packed out full of people. Are there particular themes that everybody's expressing that could be generic and useful for us to just simply highlight, so that we can see not just what the themes are, that they can often be woe stories, but also how we can transform, how we can transmute, how we can alchemicalize into higher vibe.
Oh God, you mean in terms of the themes of what people are struggling with, or the themes? Yeah. it varies. I mean, everything, it seems like our struggles always boil down to fear and resistance, and then it's depending on which flavor someone happens to be working with. And that's what I find. So it seems to be, I mean, the challenges that are really present, I think right now in our world, is trying to always be mindful of that we are in this incredibly polarizing time. And there's a lot of things that are really upsetting. And the challenge is that the way forward it does not line up with human instinct. So human instinct says, fight for what is good, fight for what is right. Human instinct says that we should, get the new job before we leave the old job. Like there's these things that we would say, this is the streetwise thing to do, or this is the thing that is culturally correct. But in both of those cases I just mentioned, the way of spirit is very much against what our natural wiring says to do. So like, for example, like in the case of saying, get the new job before you leave the old job, it's like I was talking about for me when I was trying to leave the marriage, they were like, you cannot do that. You have to be in the space of stillness from which to create something new. You have to get to the place where you have let something die, and then you're still and waiting in the nothing. And from that infinite potential, everything returns to dust. And from the dust, something new can come. But we're not wired that way. We think death is scary. We think stopping is terrifying. We think we have to take control. We have to take action. So this is to try to work with that energy as a human I think it takes a ton of courage, a ton of faith, and then the other thing about being triggered in the world, that when I tell people what the angels are telling us, about that the goal for us is to accept what is, to be at peace with what is. It can really trigger people because they feel like, I can't accept, if I accept this, who's going to stop, the horrible things that are coming. And the way the angels are trying to describe it to us, they're saying, first of all, they're saying that we don't have to accept it doesn't mean we have to like it. It just means we have to accept that it's true. And that's a big difference for people to understand. I think it makes it a lot easier to work with the energy, to understand we just have to acknowledge that it's true, because what we are doing often is we're fighting an injustice because we don't want it to be true. So we're trying to deny it because we wish so much for it not to be. And we have to get to the space where we allow it's part of what we are right now. It's part of humanity. And when we do that, when this, when we get to this space where we say, I acknowledge it's true and I stop fighting it, I'm no longer feeding energy. I'm no longer pulling my end of the tug of war. I'm no longer feeding energy into the system. If I just let go and accept what is, there's no more energy entering the system. That is actually how we stop it, right? So it's very contrary. Like working with energy is not the same as how we are taught to move things in the 3D world. And so those are the things I think that come up. If you had to say, what are the themes? I think it kind of goes in that world in lots of different ways. I see that being major themes that we are working with.
Brilliant. That's a brilliant deduction. And, as you speak, a number of thoughts play through my own consciousness. Because it feels to me that whenever we move into a commentary on what's taking place from a position of fear, that we're also not realizing that what we're seeing may be horrific, may be violent, may be injurious, may be just so destructive that it actually moves beyond our ken. But actually what we need to do is to recognize that as ugly as it is, this is human. And that we have those tendencies deep within us. Otherwise, we would not be watching that screen. And that if we humble ourselves into, well, where is the rage within me? Where is the serial killer within me? Where is the wife beater within me? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then we see, judge, and compassion opens, both for other and also for self, completing this wonderful formulae of no me, but we. We are all in this. And I believe, my darling, I worked twice actually 3 times for the UN, where I've gone into Gaza to run workshops for UN workers and Red Cross workers who are experiencing so much battle fatigue. The UN are aware of my public personality, so they draw me in. Little do they know that actually what I'm going to do is to get everybody to really chant.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
And seeing, that, for example, I mean, I've told this story many times, so many of the listeners may know this, but for example, many of these extraordinarily brave peace warriors are terminally constipated because of hyperadrenalization. Many of them have been there since October the 8th, 2023, after the day of the genocide. And so I was aware on spirit level of the fact that they were holding in their auras all of the dear departed ones that had gone, the people that they dragged from rubble, most of them dismembered.
Oh my God.
In all of this. And so therefore there was this emotional attachment. And so I tried to find the best way possible to introduce to them, we need to do rituals. We need to create altars to all of these people. And what we're going to do is we're going to call in all of our spirit guardians so that they can literally be released.
Beautiful.
And we did this with my 2 British Army officers looking at me thinking, what the fuck are you doing? And everybody was so moved that we all ended up in tears of joy, tears of resurrection, and tears not of transgression, but of resurrection, and tears of, what was that? That was extraordinary. And so the dear departed ones were no longer attached to energy field or attached to their pranic cords so that they could actually go into the light. And as a result, suddenly all of the terminal constipation moved into flow.
And they all ran for the toilets. Yay!
So they were all flowing like that.
That's success.
But, as you were saying, in those situations, which I go into with very, very open eyes and with a lot of security information. I mean, I'm very well looked after, protected and so forth. But going into those situations, one really needs to prepare oneself energetically, because as we know, we sensitives, we empaths, it impacts on us.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Gosh, I was actually thinking about this just even before you started telling that story. I was thinking about the fact that, that is one thing it comes to mind often lately about knowing the stage that we are in right now in our progression through this process of shifting, knowing that some of our hardest days are right ahead of us. And I worry sometimes about, I think part of the reasons we've been given so much information about what's coming is so that when it happens, we are not thrown off guard, that we're not thrown flat-footed, that we can say, oh, okay, here are these things that would be scary, except I know that this is part of a process. I know where we are headed. I know that we will be fine. This is all for our highest and best. But there is that thing about when you are in an environment of trauma, how does it affect you? Are you able to keep that spiritual perspective? The compassion that you mentioned is the key. I think it is that trying to stay in the space of compassion. And it's easier said than done, but I think it helps the more that we can do our healing now, the more that we can become balanced internally now, and try to achieve more and more of that spiritual perspective now, it will help us immeasurably to be the light workers we're meant to be.
Well, I have 2 glorious lights that always lead me. And I mean beyond the angels, who I know are always there, because I'm calling them in, So ever since I can remember, since being a mere child, there's been a beam of light here, which I know now is Michael, and my guardian here. And so they're always there. However, apropos the points that you were just making, so for me, we all know how to love. Yeah. So our compassion brims from the chalice of our love. All we need to do is to awaken the love and then start praying.
Yeah.
We need to pray.
Yes, we do.
So we need to have the testament of prayer, like those points of leverage that we keep returning to. I am safe, I am secure, all is well, and I'm in absolute connection with my core vibration. And a lot of people say, well, how many times do I need to say it? How long is a piece of string? And I say, well, if we were in India and you were working with a Hindu or a Buddhist Swami or, a Brahmin, they would say 108 times in the morning and 108 times. So we need to, in other words, repetition is the mother of skill. We need to get consistent.
Yes.
I hear you. I was only looking at the news this morning and thinking, shit, this is what all of our preparation has been about.
Yes.
And this is the beginning of the worsening.
Yes.
And you and I say that with a smile on our faces, because we know that what's happening in the world of the old paradigm is a correctional process, not a collapse.
Yes, it is. It's an undressing, right? It's a letting down, and it gets back to what we were saying earlier about the idea that you cannot birth something new until you have freed up energy. And you free up energy because energy is constant. You free up energy by releasing the old. And so this process is a necessity. And so the angels have been trying to coach us through it. And they say, that we need to go through this process of when you experience loss in our lives, when we do, which we will in one way or another. If we experience loss, it is to be the witness, experience the grief, process the grief, and then in the next moment to see the phoenix rising from the ashes. But they don't skip the space of stillness in between. This has been one of the big things from the mother of creation, that she is like this energy, so fascinating, like in this idea of the number 13. And this was brought to my attention by a couple of friends of mine who channel the Pleiadians, and they are into the same calendar as the Mayan calendar, which is all about the number 13, apparently. And the number 13 is that moment of integration. And if I had to say, that would be the moment of stillness, the place where, and so fascinating in our world that we skip the number 13. There's no elevators that are number 13. There are no 13 floors. 13 is the unlucky number. Like we want to jump because we don't like that space of the stillness where we can't act, where we can't do our human thing, which is try to control. Like we skip right over from the ending of something to jumping to the next thing. But when we do that, we're just recreating the past. And all new things come from that number 13 space, from the space where we let things rest in infinite potential. Yeah.
And of course, not that I'm correcting you at all, but this is rife in the US, but not in Europe. We have 13 floors.
Oh, you do? Oh, that's so interesting. So do you guys have any number 13, no number 13 parallels to that? Or are you guys all good with number 13?
It is accepted. It is accepted. And I can see the merit of, although it maybe has tincture of dysfunctionality, because 13 is the number of spiritual transformation. I mean, let's get over it. Yes. Of course, we're looking at a very young country in relation to the United States of America. And of course, we know historically about the great melting pot of those dear ones who are leaving cultural deprivation often at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th, who were carrying with them the woe of their blood lineage and how they'd left so many people behind. Yeah. And of course, the whole substance of what took place in the 30s, the rise of Nazism within that particular area of Europe. So carrying superstition with them. So it's understandable that they were the empire builders, so to speak. Not the Republican builders, I should say, because you're not an empire. You're a Republican. You're a Republic. How that would be injected into those great buildings on the northeastern seaboard, for example. So I have a love affair with America, you see. So I've spent a lot of time in America working, particularly in the entertainment industry. And increasingly, the angel said to me in 2012, okay, now you're going to America. And, the publisher that I had at that time was saying, well, would you come to Denver and do this trade show? And one of my oracles had come out. And so I stood for hours signing the oracle. And so many of the wonderful people who came were from all over the US, and they had their own shops, their stores. And so they said, well, would you come? So I was going to Florida, I was going to Indianapolis, I was going to, oh my goodness, San Francisco, Los Angeles, all over.
How fun.
So I'm pretty sure that in a few years' time I will be there, because as we know, the United States of America is really the gateway to the golden age. And what I'm going through with the Angels of Atlantis is the preparation through to 2032, when the doorway opens.
Yes. Do you have any idea where you'll go in the United States? Are you drawn anywhere in particular?
New England.
Oh, interesting. What draws you there?
I love it.
Yeah.
I just love it. But also, I want to hear more about the connection with the angels. But I'll just give you this quick story. When I first arrived in the United States, it was 70, I think.
Yeah.
And there it was, Manhattan. And these dear, dear friends, of course, at that time I was in the incarnation of an actor. And so I was auditioning on Broadway and so forth and so forth. However, friends of mine said, we're going to Maine. I'd never heard of Maine. We're going to Maine. You're coming with us. And we're going to do all sorts of amazing things. Like we're going to go trekking. And I thought, wow. Anyway, so cut to the chase. There we are climbing Mount Caribou in northern central Maine. It was a beautiful summer day. And so we were in shorts and T-shirts, and we got to the top. I mean, it was a walk. It wasn't a trek. We weren't mountain climbing.
Yeah.
And National Parks Authority do this amazing job, as we all know, in the States. So we got to the top, and it was so beautiful. And most of us lay down and went deep into alpha. And I went somewhere. I felt the power of the crystalline grid within the mountain, within Mount Caribou, which is not that high. It's more of a hill than a mountain. And then I came out of the trance, and all of my mates had gone. Where, I don't know. But as I sat up, I'd taken my T-shirt off, and a breeze moved over my chest. And in the breeze, I heard, and I burst into floods of tears, because I realized that my ancestors were calling me. So that's where it started.
Wow.
And then sort of leap forward. It was in the late 80s, early 90s, with visiting New Mexico, where I was claimed by a Native American sound healer of the Tewa, who was very powerful, beautiful painted arrow. So I worked with him for about 3 years. This was something that the angels had promised me in 87, because I was like a lovesick teenager. I just wanted to start teaching angels. And they said, you will not. We're going to prepare you. What we mean by this is that when the student is ready, the masters will come. And so beautiful painted arrow was one of them. So that's where the indicator is. But he was an Atlantean, so he saw me. In the summertime, I go very, very dark. So he said, but you have red skin. I won't go into other features of the story, quite interesting. But I had to show him my body, because the Tewa all have a birthmark on the base of their spines. And so he wanted to check to see if I was legitimate. And of course, I don't have a birthmark on the base of my spine. So as he pulled down my shorts, and I thought, what?
What are you doing?
You don't have the mark, but you don't have a forked tongue, so I'll work with you.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, so that's what started. But let's leap back into those higher vibrational forces, because we've dealt with the practicability of what we're experiencing now in a very watered down version, I know, but the information is there, we all know. And you have this iridescent ability to really draw that information from the angelic communion. And it's always deeply, deeply profound because of the way that they work through your heart.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the key, isn't it?
Yes,
that although we've been educated and socialized and conditioned here, that actually the heart is the seat of the soul. And as soon as we go there, then the interconnectivity between ourselves and the angels is really crucial. However, my question is, as you look into the next 3 years, how are you seeing it, babe?
Complicated. It's complicated. The next 3 years, so the angels are not good with timing. We know that they live outside of time, but I do feel they've given us really good indications about where things are headed in general, and many of the things they've told us, very specific things, have already happened. And I see those things as breadcrumbs. Like it's like they put like a little thing here, a little thing here, and all those things have come to pass. And now we're here. And I feel like we are on the brink of some of the more major things that are shifting, that start to trickle down to how do we live our daily lives. So there's sort of this trifecta of like political instability, economic instability, and earth instability. And these things, I think, all come together in a similar time period. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is going to be, you mentioned the US being sort of the basket where a lot of this stuff starts. I think here is going to become a little crazy for a little while. Mm-hmm. And so like which of those pieces, you could kind of go into the depth of it. The biggest thing that the angels try to remind us to try to help us stay in a place of calm and surrender is that not everything happens everywhere. So it could be in your area that one of these types of things lands at your doorstep, but not everything, and that when we start to get worried or fearful is to just draw our focus back to our four walls and to focus on the fact that everybody who's here with us today is in a safe place, right? And when you look, even though there's chaos going out into the world, there could be chaos going down, in your same city down somewhere. But if you look where you are, like you're safe, you're in a space of safety. This is the reality you're creating for yourself. They've said that there would be, the further we get in terms of the energies coming in, the more they will be able to create miracles for us. And boy, was that honestly, a hard message for me to deliver, was when they told me, like I channeled this amazing message from them about how they would be able to actually step in and perform miracles for us. Mm-hmm. And I was like, gosh, that sounds like a beautiful thought, beautiful idea. Mm-hmm. But I just couldn't, I'm skeptical. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've heard this, I told this story before, but I went out that evening, I channel Thursday nights, and then I deliver it Friday mornings. Thursday night, I went out after channeling. I got that message. Wow, what a beautiful message. I hope that's true. It's kind of how I felt. I went out, had dinner, stopped afterwards at this beautiful little boutique that I normally never go into because it's like very, very expensive. And ran into this woman there who shared this incredible story with me of her own miracle. And it was undeniable, where she'd been stuck in an airport late at night. She was a young mom, had this infant, the airport shutting down around her. She's crying on the floor, feeding her baby. And this lone ticket agent finds her and offers her, says, I'll take care of you, gives her, vouchers for hotels, and gives her, rebooks her flight, sends her off for a nice evening in the hotel. She comes back in the morning and she hands her ticket to the gate agent, and the gate agent says, who booked your ticket? She says, oh, the gate agent that was here last night. There was no gate agent here last night. There was nobody here that meets that description. Like absolute angel visitation. And This is my experience the night before I'm supposed to go deliver this message. So to me, this is the miracle. This is my miracle. My miracle is getting to experience her miracle on the night that I need to be able to really embody this message that I'm supposed to share the next day. And it gives me so much more faith in the truth of it, that as we hear about the chaos on the horizon and even the chaos that's already underway, to recognize that the angels have always been here for us, but they will be here for us even more tangibly in the coming years.
Yeah. It's such a beautiful story. I did tune into your transmission that day and remember the story, and I was sort of gleeful because it reminded me of some of the extraordinary magic that I've also experienced, often in extreme situations, one of them being perilous, in the middle of a blizzard in Connecticut, where I was working in a friend's healing center. And I was driving in this blizzard to get back to where I was staying, which was a distance about 3 miles. But of course, in the middle of the blizzard in New England, it was really, really tough, even though I had snow tires and so forth. And I noticed that there was a car parked. It was 11 o'clock at night, and the snow was just blizzarding.
Doing what blizzards do.
Car parked, and the door of the driver's side was open, and the lights were on full, in the middle of a countryside, and everybody was sort of hugging their log fires or whatever. And he was slumped, the man in the car, just one man, was slumped over the wheel. And so I stopped the car, slid across the road because I just knew he was having a heart attack.
Oh.
I thought, God, I got to call emergency services. And I'd left my cell in the car. So I had to slide back to get the cell, call the emergency services. They came within 2 minutes. When did that happen? But as I'd done this, I walked across, I slid across the road, and there was a young man sitting in the passenger seat. But there was no young man sitting in the passenger seat. And he had one of his hands on the heart of this man, and the other hand was at the back. So front and rear of heart. And this being looked at me. This was not human. But looked vaguely like a human. I remember he had a black hoodie. I heard the ambulance. I turned and waved, turned around, and there was no young man there.
Oh my gosh.
The man was beginning to recover. You know, stories like this.
Yes.
But apropos,
I love it.
It's spine chilling, isn't it?
Yes.
Apropos the situation that we're looking into, which of course is very close to us through our tablets or our cell phones or our TV screens or whatever, of what's happening in the Middle East.
Yeah.
That today I heard one of the most remarkable men speak angel language. And really, he's a political journalist. And he was Palestinian. And his father created Hamas.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
But he's completely defected. He lives in asylum in the United States, but now he's beginning to speak about what's really taking place. And he was being asked these extraordinary questions. And he moved into one point where the interviewer said to him, "But who are you?" And he said, "I am infinite potential." And then spoke.
Wow.
So you see, there are these glimmers that are beginning to happen. And if a man like this, who has been through the travail of reared by Palestinian terrorists, wore body bags with explosives going into Tel Aviv to blow up Jewish people, was imprisoned, went through a renunciation in prison, and that's when he realized that he could no longer sanction or obey what was the rule of law, being a good Islamic boy, and he defected and became a citizen of the United States, is married, has many children, has a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful being, that if he can start speaking in this way, that this is going to be a ripple effect.
Yes. Yeah.
And these I see also as being contemporized miracles.
Yes. Yeah, that's a beautiful story. Wow. Amazing. Yeah, I haven't heard of him, but would love to check out his story for sure.
Yeah, I'll send you the, he actually was a client of mine a few months ago. He came to me because he speaks very good English, but he has a very thick Arabic accent. And so he came to me, he was recommended by one of my other clients. And I hope to see more of him because he is a being of such light. I immediately fell in love with him. I'm just oh my God, this is extraordinary. What an amazing, noble peace warrior this is.
Wow.
So I'll send you the details.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
So we know that miraculous aid is apparent. Now, the angels of Atlantis are also giving me a lot of information. Are you picking this up as well? I'm sure you are, about the fact that our planet is clustered by star brothers and sisters, and that they're observing all that is taking place. So 3:00 this morning, because we had a workshop online last night with a lot of beautiful people called The Angels Speak, where people can come forward and I channel for them. So I wasn't really sleeping very deeply last night. 3:00 in the morning, ping, and I was shown the vision of how our extraterrestrial friends, our brothers and sisters, who are mostly Pleiadian and Lyran and Andromedan and Orion and how they're going to project onto the atmosphere, the etheric atmosphere of our planet, certain images, which means that all multitudes of people are going to see them. And that they will be uplifted by these images. They didn't specify what the images would be, but they're obviously going to be images that are full of salvation, that are full of resurrection, that are going to be wondrous and awe-inspiring in their referencing. I thought that was fascinating.
That is fascinating. Well, our whole relationship, like to me, I see it as part of the progression that our relationship with, however you want to refer to it, our star beings, non-Earth beings, aliens, whatever ETs, whatever. I don't think there's a great word, honestly. Star beings. I like that one. But anyways, I love the idea that the angels have basically said that we will get to have open contact with them as soon as we have world peace, which sounds impossible until you realize that we are changing. We will actually be able to achieve it because of the shift in consciousness. But the last thing they said that I thought was so beautiful was they said that sharing what we know with the galactic, becoming true galactic citizens, is a rite of passage. They said speaking your truth into that connection, into that unity with the galactic, is a rite of passage. And it's a beautiful experience. So I think it's an amazing new phase of life that we are heading into. I was looking ahead and at where Uranus is. I always love to see where Uranus is because it brings so much chaos into different phases, the interesting chaos, right? Into different phases of your life. And it's shifting. And in not this next 7 years, but the 7 years after that, I think it's going into my 9th house of, so it'll be, change, mixing up my understanding of the universe and my understanding of my philosophy of existence. And so to me, that says aliens all over it. I'm like, woo, okay, let's go.
Exactly. Which is why I refer to them as being our star brothers and sisters.
Yes.
These star beings, because these are beings of super intelligence.
Yes. Yes.
Because I don't actually traffic with Star Wars, because what I'm shown is the divine.
Yes.
And for me, that is hallowed and sacred. And I do not see the diversification of duality in that context that creates conflict. I simply see the co-creative elements of how they communicate telepathically in this extraordinary, in this joyous, ecstatic way. That's what I'm introduced to,
Yes.
And I'm one of these people that have been taken into a spaceship and met the Elohim. I met a transposition, a holograph of the Elohim, because obviously we're dealing with vast beings of light, the master architects of the universe. And that was just extraordinary. Amazing. How wonderful to be with you, because I can feel the power of the radiation is so strong. And so it brings another element, which you were touching on just now in relation to your community.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that this is something that has brimmed forth from yourself in your articulacy, the nature of how we're beginning to see ways of soul tribing, that we're beginning to see ways of diversifying from our blood lineage, because so many of those relationships are immensely toxic. So we're renegotiating our contracts with these people and moving into our spirit lineage. And as a result of that, we can see the promise of collective. We can see the promise of co-creative communities. Is that something that you're feeling as you move forward?
Yes. I think it will be. I mean, already we are wired like attracts like, so I think that as we move into higher and higher vibrations, I think everybody who's going to be attracted to your work will have been going through at least at somewhere on the journey, right? They may have been on it for a long time. They may be just starting, but no matter where you are in the journey, you quickly discover that you are falling out of resonance with the people that maybe have been in your life, that are not on a journey, that are not working on themselves, that are not open to new concepts. And it's a gradual selection where you just find yourself gravitating more and more. But I think as we're going through these events of the shift, that in part of the unwinding, it will be encouraging us to form increasingly localized relationships, starting to get our needs met locally. So this is a new structure of society that's forming. And I think then out of that, then I think once we come into this new space where we're finding our relationship to each other is shifting. So we've been in this very, very big world. I think we go to, in some ways, to a very small world and then back into a big world again. I think over time, we will be connected there. I believe there will be communities that are on Earth that are very high vibration. I don't want to call them cities, but they're kind of like cities. I don't really understand. The angels have described them to me as I believe there will be places that we're drawn to go, that we will meet each other, that are very high frequency. And we will be able to stay. I don't know if we stay, if we move from one to another, if we're just visiting and then we go home. I don't really know. But they've said we stay in tiny alcoves of warmth and cleanliness. Like it's just fascinating to think about, fascinating. But I don't fully understand it yet. But I believe we travel somehow in a way that's related to water, they've said.
Yes.
I don't know. These are down the road, right? This is down the road. This is something that I believe I will experience it in my lifetime.
Yes.
So,
absolutely. And I would say, because things are so accelerated, that it's very close. It's very, very close.
Yeah.
But obviously, there's going to be a bridge which is immediate in the secular world, which will be to do with the correctional facilitation of the 5 great establishments, literally moving into whatever they move into, a correctional facility. I'll let everybody's imagination work out what that is. But as a result of that, our supply chains are going to be weakened.
Yes.
And as a result, we're going to come together and realize that a plant-based diet is crucial for the evocation of what our crystalline body is all about. Yes. And as a result, the word that the angels of Atlantis use is that we're going to be moving into citadels of light.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. That absolutely matches what this concept, this sort of, this place that I feel it more than I see it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And because when I worked with them, having met them in 87, which is now nearly 40 years, of course, the first 20 years, they gave me download after download after download of the angel of Atlantis, which is what I brought into the book, The Angels of Atlantis. But so when they were talking about citadels, I said, but are you talking about Atlantis or are you talking about my future self, giving me communication? Because I was given a prophecy many, many years ago by this extraordinary medium that he saw me walking along a sandy area dressed from head to toe in white, flowing white, surrounded by other people in white, and that we were all part of a sacred community that had been created after, he said, the points of completion in the societal world. So I feel that that's what it's actually all about. It's about the future rather than because what you just described is the way that Atlantis was organized.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah. And then it's interesting because I've also like I hear and understand that we're going through massive shifts, economic shifts. The angels have told me we will have sort of one world currency coming up. There's some very specific things about major shifts in government where governments are kind of falling apart. But then I also know that I'm meant to travel and I'm meant to do events. So how do you do that? If that means travel is still happening. That means that there's some sort of an economy, right? Because you can get places and you can, like, I don't know if I'll be staying in hotels or somebody's tiny alcove, but but apparently I'm supposed to continue. That's my view of where I'm supposed to be working, is continuing with these big events. And which is I'm thrilled for, because I love that. It's absolutely soul nourishing. And then I think about these visions of this, these amazing gathering places, these cities, I guess we call them. But then I had the strangest vision of myself. I've had 2 very clear future visions of myself. One was super spontaneous, and it was very early in my journey. I was on a walk in my old neighborhood, and I came around a corner, and all of a sudden it hit me in the face that I saw myself in that same place in the future. And I was much older. I was probably 30 years ahead. And I was walking up a hill. I'd clearly been speaking at some sort of event there and it was at this lovely park. And I'd clearly been speaking because there was people with me, and I was walking up this hill, and there was a young boy looking at me that I could tell he didn't really understand what I'd been talking about, but that I had been the speaker. So he was like, "Hey, who are you?" kind of thing. I could feel, like, because of his reaction, I could tell that I'd been the speaker. And there was, but it was very much, the place looked the way it did now. It didn't have, there was, it was like a lot. Anyways, so some things I think will still feel normal. I think there was these, again, I think there'll be some things that feel vastly different. And there will be, I think, energetic focus points that we can go to, but I think we don't, but I think there'll be large parts of the world, certain areas that will feel, I don't know if restaurants will still be in business or not, but they will feel the same in some ways. Do you know what I mean? Like there will be some normalcy.
Absolutely. Because after all, when we think about the creation of these significant artifacts, shall we say, they're the buildings that we live in, or
yes,
the restaurants that we go into, many of them were built on sacred principles and vestiges of Western enlightenment, which has at its very core the sanctity of the individual. This is the great problem for our Muslim brothers, do you see? Because they don't get that and they want to destroy it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why, the great Douglas Murray wrote the book about death cults, because they're hell-bent rather than heaven-sent. And so I'm sure that this will be so. But of course, what we're feeling is that the entire interior of our beings will be different.
Yes. That, I think, and that is, we create a different reality. So the place may look, but I could tell even in seeing it that everybody there felt there was more light. People were more open. And here's an interesting thing. People looked healthier.
Yes.
So that's an interesting thing. People looked much healthier. So if I think about that, but so different, but I think it's also comforting to think that some of the things we count on as like, this is what life is. Some of those are going to stay the same. And I think that
they hold value, don't they? They hold rich value.
Yeah.
And I don't feel, because what we're doing is we're prizing away the detritus so that we can get back to the core values. What really matters, not what I am, but who I am, and the way that I interrelate with all of my fellow brothers and sisters, my fellow Homo sapiens, and develop patience and tolerance. And because there are obviously going to be a few teething problems. But how, as we both know, that as you describe this, we're moving into fifth, sixth dimensional frequency, and that it's not a place, it's not a situation, it's not a location, it's a vibration.
Yes, yeah.
And this is going to happen within as well as without, but I feel that that's what we're describing. We're describing the internal recalibration. And as a result of that, I had a health issue at the beginning of this year, and I went to see one of my energy healers, and he said, I haven't seen you for about 5 years, but you look younger.
That's nice. Exactly. Thank you very much.
So you mean all of the yoga and all of the plant-based foods and no alcohol and no coffee, all of this discipline, which has been fundamental to me for the last 45 years, to live as a vegetarian. It's all working. It's all working. Yeah. And the angels say to me, you're going to be here in another 30 years, so get ready.
That's awesome.
If you see so extraordinary, hearing your wisdom and all of your sharings, this deep, deep, deep love-spent sharings. They're just so exquisite. But also, the point of coherence, that here we are sharing on this very, very deep level. And so much of what you say, I'm thinking, oh, yes. And by the way, the little alcove that you were talking about, what popped into my mind were those sacred caves in the Southwest, in both New Mexico and Arizona.
I love those.
Where the Atlantis peoples lived. They're your alcoves.
Yes. Those two of my favorite vacations. I went as a kid when I was 12 to the Mesa Verde, which is just, if you've never been there, and if you ever come to the US, if you haven't been, I think it's an amazing trip. And I brought my kids there when they were at that same age bracket, because it's just, you get to actually, you get to go in and actually walk around the ruins, and incredible to imagine that people live there. Yeah.
And of course, we know Anasazi means they who came from the skies.
Yes. Oh, do you want to hear something amazing about that? Is that, okay, so I had this, we had a tour guide who was walking us through, who said something kind of almost under their breath, like clearly this was not part of the regular tour, and they said it and then just let it drop, And, but so one of the cliff dwellings, in order to get into it, you had to climb through almost like this really narrow opening. And they warn you before you go that you have to have some athletic ability to get get in, because you have to crawl down and almost like through this rock to get into the dwelling. And the tour guide basically implied that there were some sort of giant beings that would eat people, that people were running away from and hiding in this. So anyways, it's just, people speculate all the time about different beings who have been there, but to hear this explanation from this tour guide I thought, oh, my ears perked up. I was very interested to hear that there may have been at that time. I don't know about the eating part, but the idea that there may have been multiple types of people, people living there at that time.
Unquestionably,
Yeah.
It's flashing into, it's a parallel, but it's sort of flashing into a different culture.
Yeah.
And the culture of Egypt, which is a land that I've been visiting for 56 years. At the age of 15, this is where I met Thoth for the first time, and he became my master. So I run retreats there, twice a year, whenever I can.
Beautiful.
And my Egyptian guide, is like my son, who is a profound priest of the old and ancient magic. And, when we're together, I always spend a week after the retreat, when everybody's gone home. I spend a week, and we get lost in interesting places. We don't intend to get lost.
Yeah.
But there we are in the desert thinking, wait a minute, did we come that way or that way? And then unusual things happen where Berber tribes people or native people, indigenous people, suddenly appear from nowhere. And they often have their Raskolnikovs, and it's sort of a little bit scary to begin with. But then Ashraf will begin speaking to them in their dialect, and they're the most amazing people. I'm thinking of one occasion who they invited us into their cave dwelling and provided us. So I met all of the family. They provided us with tea and sweetmeats, and they love tobacco, so we were smoking tobacco. And they told us stories about the people who come from the skies, that they have a regular witness, but that they're much taller than human beings, and they have almost no mouth, no ears, but they have eyes and little mini noses. And whenever they communicate initially, it's always telepathic, and then they sing songs to the indigenous people.
Yeah. Wow.
It's the same thing.
Wow.
Well, look, we have very, very rich sharing. So I would love in this moment to invite you back on, if you can bear it, in the fall. And we can take it all a stage further and see, well, what has happened around the world since our conversation, which is on June the 30th. Interesting, because there you were talking about Uranus and how Uranus is in this extraordinary dance with Mars at the moment. So something is going to explode on the world stage, we can see. But we can pick up the pieces and then move on and bring in even more transcendental realities.
Yes, I love it. Let's do it.
Would you be able to do that?
I would love it. That would be great. Thank you for the invitation. Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have been in the presence of Anne Tucker, Trance Channel, and Stewart Pearce, Angelic Emissary. I hope you've been absolutely thrilled by what we've been sharing. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate. Stewart at the Alchemy of Voice. Stewart at theangelsofatlantis.com. And what we're going to do, Ryan, actually, can you shoot? Oh, there we are. We see he's already prepared.
Thank you,
Ryan. It'll be in the comments underneath the this video on a number of major streaming channels, but particularly on YouTube.
Thank you so much.
Bless you for who you are and what you do. Untold promise within all that you do. The radiation is so vast. It makes me, in this moment, it makes me very, very full of sweet tears.
I love it. Thank you so much, Stewart. It's been such a fun, easy rapport with you. I just enjoyed myself so much. Thank you.
Oh, bless you, darling. Bless you. So stay where you are. And Ryan will finish. And namaste, everybody. Send Anne love. We send you love. And look forward to seeing you in the future, wherever that is.